Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dilna Mobile. I've selected a paper which is published in February 2018. The topic is Mobile Phishing Attacks and Defense Mechanisms, State of Art and Open Research Challenges by Deeksha Goyal and Ankit Kumar Jain. It's a very well structured paper. It explains about various kinds of mobile phishing attacks and defense mechanisms employed till date. I find it very useful. So, moving to the agenda as described by the professor. Moving on to the introduction. As we all know, there is an increase in the smartphone users because of its ease of availability and the low cost data plans. The paper gives a statistical prediction from which says there can be an 120% increase in smartphone users from the year 2014 to 2020. And that makes it most vulnerable because it's the most personalized device, and any limitations in the hardwares and the our careless behaviors can makes it the prime target for the attackers. This slide represents an overview of various mobile applications and their phishing traffic. And as we all know, it's very evident in this graph that games and the email are the most targeted, uh, are mostly targeted, and games being the highest. The first graph explains about the various industries targeted by these phishing attackers. The most prominent ones are the retail and the financial. So it's a very common that the attackers impersonate themselves as a retail or a financial uh, individual or employees, and try to gather information from the user. And the least targeted ones are the social networking sites. And the second one explains the tremendous increase in SMS growth from the year 1993 to 2015. The paper also shows about a trust level on messaging platform, and SMS holds a maximum trust level compared to the messaging apps like WhatsApp and Instagram, and then by Facebook, Yahoo Messengers, and Skype. Then comes the push notification direct to the company's applications. So now let's discuss about the benefits or the personal gain behind phishing. One of the major one is financial benefits. So since we all know we all save the credit card or the bank account details in various online services. So by getting access to our smartphones, the attackers can steal our login details and get and gather the financial details like saved credit cards and bank accounts. They also looks for stealing the personal information like name, address, phone number, email address. These personal informations can be useful or can be purchased by other people who wants to hide their identity. Then phishing can be used to defame a company or individual. Then there is another way that phishing can be used for obtaining ransom by especially by data theft or withdrawing access on your data. So one such example is ransomware, which when installed, which when downloaded, prevents an access to a data or threatens to publish the data unless the ransom is paid. So the attackers will have complete hold on this data. So we will not be only once the ransom is paid, we will be able to access those data, which can be very critical in case of big organizations. Propagation of attack. If phishing can be used to hide the location of these attackers. So exploit the security gaps. Next one, that is to detect the vulnerability and errors of for Android applications for future use. Then fame and notoriety. So attackers, some of them do phishing for fun to gain the popularity or recognition among the peers. So next is why smartphones. We all know that it's very personalized nowadays. Our smartphones are highly personalized. So um, they have assets. So in case of smartphones, the information in the smartphone or installed apps can be categorized as assets. Then security objectives, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's another targets by the smartphones. So, so in this slide, we'll discuss about the major reasons for smartphone vulnerability. One of the major one is the small screen size. The smartphones have comparatively smaller screen size compared to a desktop or other devices, so which makes it impossible or it's rather difficult to find out the legitimacy or the authenticity of a web page which we are visiting. We tend to store a large amount of data in our smartphones, basically our financial or the personal data like health records. And the third one is an open source platform. The smartphones usually use and like Android operating system. So the source code is easily available for the attackers, and hence the vulnerability lies there. Then simple login interfaces. Another one is the lack of user awareness. Even though we have so much of mechanisms to prevent phishing, the user itself may tend to access these phishing emails or the phishing response to a phishing messages or calls that makes it more vulnerable. Then download the application from a third-party application store. Since the source codes are open from open source platforms, it's easier for the attackers to mimic an application so that the logo looks similar, the color, the interface, everything looks similar. So it's actually difficult for a common man to understand which application is authentic and which one is fake. So they might uh, access the third party application store and download an application itself which is not authentic, and that makes it highly vulnerable. So in this slide, let's discuss about how phishing can be a threat to a smartphone or the device. Uh, the device can be targeted by both attackers as well as the user. So let's discuss how an attacker can be harmful to the smartphone. The first one is exposing or altering a personal information stored in a smartphone. Second one, an attacker through a wireless network attacks can access the phone for eavesdropping, spoofing, or sniffing, which can lead to corrupting, modifying, or blocking the data. The attackers also can deny certain services to the user by denial of service attack. So these are the three major threats caused by the attackers to the smartphones. So now let's discuss about the threats caused by the user. The user can cause the malfunctioning of the device. Then user can open the smartphone for phishing, open the ports of the smartphones for phishing. Then user also can cause the loss of device or the platform alteration, that it can lead to the uh, corruption of the operating system. So till now we were discussing about the various security concerns of mobile smartphone phishing, and this is an overview slide which explains about the assets as the security objectives, the reason for vulnerabilities, and the uh, threats caused by the attackers on the smartphones. So let's discuss about the mobile phishing life cycle. Unlike all other phishing activity, uh, the life cycle goes like this: planning, phishing, penetration, and data gathering. This slide gives an overview of mobile phishing. The first and foremost is the planning phase, where the attackers decide on the communication media the type of the target device, and the attacking technique. Once the preparatory phase is over, they initiate the phishing process. Uh, Once the attackers gain access, they can actually pop up fake login pages, or they can even upload or download malicious applications, so which will trick the user, and the user can give the attackers an access to his or her personal details, financial informations, which can be then collected at the end of the phishing phase. So now let's discuss about the research methodology adopted. The authors use the data sets, mainly the ham and spam data sets from the internet, and each of these data sets were analyzed for phishing instance from a set of phishing and legitimate instance. The classification matrix followed are as follows, and the data sets used for the study are given in the table. This slide shows the formula used by the authors to measure the phishing instance. So now let's discuss about the taxonomy of mobile phishing attacks. So this is an overview slide about various phishing attacks which are known till date. First and foremost, one is phishing through social engineering. So we will be going in detail of each of them. So the first category is social engineering. Second one is through mobile application. Third is through malware. Fourth is through online social networks. Fifth is through content injection. Sixth is phishing through wireless medium. Seventh is technical subterfuge. Now let's discuss about the first category in mobile phishing, that is social engineering. So what exactly is social engineering? Social engineering uh, is a uh, is a mobile phishing process, or in general we can say it's an art of deceiving users into disclosing their sensitive informations. So the social engineering, it follows few methods. First and foremost, one is phishing through SMS, or it's also called smishing. So here, the attacker sent text messages along with a link, which when opened either redirects the user to a fake website, or a malicious program is installed in the background. The second kind of social engineering social engineering phishing is voice over internet protocol, VoIP, or vishing. Here, the attacker, who impersonate themselves as a retail or a financial company representative, gathers information about the user, uh, like sensitive informations like name, phone number, address, bank details, etc. The third one is a website phishing, where the um, the attacker targets the system. The attacker can create an exact replica of the legitimate website to collect the financial or the personal details. One such example is the attacker can impersonate a web page, a phishing website, as a eBay page or a PayPal page. The last one in social engineering are emails. The attackers can send a malicious link, emails with malicious link asking the smartphone users to update the personal information, or which, when accessed, redirects itself to a phishing website. There are two kinds of emails: spear phishing and whaling. Uh, let's explain about the spear phishing. It usually targets individuals or small business groups. Spear phishing is considered to be highly effective in collecting the personal details. Almost 70% of the users open these emails and within an hour they seems to have more than 50% of them have accessed those phishing links and opening their smartphones to vulnerability. The second one is whaling. The whaling is a process of phishing which targets high-profile companies or executives who have access to a more valuable information. The whaling is also difficult to detect and have high success rate. So this is an overview of email phishing. Second category of mobile phishing is phishing through mobile application, where the attackers can either hijack a legitimate application or they can make a uh, they can pretend to be a legitimate application and fools the user. So there are different types of phishing through mobile application, like similarity attacks where the login interface and the UI are very similar to the legitimate one. Some of them can, like forwarding attacks, they prompt the user to input personal details. Then third one can be running in background, or the background attacks. It will wait for the user to access certain websites so that it can attacks, or it can impersonate the login page. Another can be a notification attacks or the floating attacks. So this is an overview how the distribution of malicious applications in mobile phones, how they can uh, gather the gather the informations from the user and from the smartphone. Third category is phishing through mobile malware, and we all know malware is a malicious software that gains access to a device of a user without his consent. And the table shows a list of malwares, known malwares, and how they can access, how they can hijack our mobile phones, and what are the solutions available till date. This slide shows the mobile ransomware, which have the ability to lock the device of the user, preventing him to access the data. The ransomware is a malware which have the capability to encrypt the data and decrypts only when the ransom is paid. It also shows a table which displaying the top 10 countries attacked by the ransomware, and the first rank goes to US, and the second to Japan, and the 10th rank goes to Netherlands. So the fourth category is phishing through online social networks. So the the attackers can impersonate to be a famous personality, and or they can post malicious links in their websites, then fake profiles like fake Facebook account, then Twitter account, then fake communities. So these are the major online social network phishing tools they use. The fifth category is phishing through content injection. So what is a phishing through content injection? Here, the phisher modifies a part of the content of the reliable website to deceive the user and takes him out of the legitimate web page where he is asking for the personal information. So one of them is cross-site scripting. Category 6 is phishing through wireless medium. So as we all know, the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which opens smartphones for vulnerability, or we can say hotspot vulnerability. As users, we do not authenticate authenticate the access point. Um, once a mobile phone is connected either through a Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth, the attackers can send malicious data to the victim's device by establishing a connection. Category 7 is technical subterfuge, where the attacker can alter the details of the web pages. So the different kinds are host file poisoning, phishing through search engine, used compromised web servers. Other kinds of technical subterfuge are man in the middle, where the attackers will be in the between a victim and legitimate website, and attackers can force the user to enter his credit card details or personal information. Then the the major differentiating factor between a legitimate website and a phishing website is the SSL certificate. Some of the attackers can fool the user by by redirecting them to the legitimate website and access the certificate after obtaining certain informations. Then attackers also can cause the session hijacking. Another kind of technical subterfuge is DNS poisoning, where the attacker can set up a fake DNS server or alter the existing DNS table, changing the IP address corresponding to the domain name. Once the DNS is altered or poisoned, it opens the it opens a smartphone to direct to the spoofed web pages. Now let's discuss about the mobile phishing defense mechanisms. This is an overview slide of explaining various defense mechanisms available to prevent mobile phishing. This is another table which explains about anti-phishing solutions for various phishing techniques. Examples are smishing, wishing, phishing websites, phishing and spam emails, phishing applications and malwares, which we have already discussed in detail, and how it can be prevented. This is another overview slide which explains how authors came to a conclusion whether uh, an attack is phishing or is it legitimate. So now let's discuss the conclusions. From the various attacks we discussed, it is very clear that the user plays a major role in opening the susceptibility of a smartphone device. So hence, user education or training is highly advisable to prevent such kind of attacks. And there is a broad scope in research that can be done to develop new defense mechanisms to fight against the mobile phishing attack. So this is a high a scope for future study. The paper actually explains about various kinds of mobile phishing attacks and defensive mechanism, but they kind of restrict themselves for Android-based applications and OS. So which I found could have been improved. Two research topic which I found would be interesting. And first one is designing an efficient machine learning technology to detect phishing. Second one is a method to continuously update and distribute list of blacklisted websites. And this is the paper which we were discussing all this while. Thank you, everyone.